Have I got a podcast for you this week? In this conversation, we explore accessing the wisdom that lies within and having the bravery to share this with the world with internationally renowned channel Rebecca Dawson. Rebecca shares how she spontaneously became a channel, the impact it had on her life, and how she stepped out to fully embrace her ability and make her living through it. What becomes amazingly apparent among many things in this conversation, particularly as Rebecca explains what channeling actually is the fact that this is something that we can all do. I just want you to think about that. We all have the ability to access the vast wealth of information that exceeds our imagination. All we have to do is look inside, not outside. I found it an amazing privilege and treat that Rebecca took time to join me in my podcasting space to create such a truly fascinating conversation packed with so much information. She's a hugely engaging and possibility provoking while playful lady. You know, more and more people around us, particularly here in WA, are waking up to the greater capabilities and paradigms and energies. And I'm pretty sure if you listen to my podcast regularly and you look out, you'll start to feel this. And in this conversation, we talk a lot about that and beginning to explore why. And if you feel the same way, you're going to really enjoy this conversation. One final point I'm going to leave you with before you dive into this conversation is this. Just listen out for when Rebecca uses the word I and when she uses the word we. Because at times, it's not just Rebecca that's talking. So enjoy Rebecca. Hello and welcome back to WA Real. I'm your host, Bryn Edwards, opening up to the wisdom that lies within and some of that wisdom that is possibly beyond our senses, and having the bravery to share that knowledge is just some of the things that we'll be exploring with my guest today, Rebecca Dawson. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I like your introduction.
What? Yeah, I did think about that. Try to chunk things up.
Yeah.
So, one of the questions I always like to ask my guests at the start is their connection to WA. Now, you grew up here.
I did. I am a Perthite. My parents were both from Perth.
Yep.
My ancestry, I'm pretty sure, is convict, and before that British and Irish. So I've been here for a long time, educated in Perth, and really got my first taste of, I guess, global awareness when I was 16. Had my first solo trip overseas and haven't really stopped since then, but still call Perth home.
Super. What was it like growing up in Perth for you?
I think it was a great place to be, actually, in the 70s and 80s, cricket in the street, and you got to walk to school when you were very young. And I think back then suburbia in Perth was very much about the village atmosphere. I grew up south of the river in Rossmoyne, and everybody knew everybody. So it was a pretty safe feeling growing up in Perth, but there was always that feeling that there was so much beyond that we didn't necessarily have access to. So I think particularly for Generation X's growing up in Perth, the ultimate goal really was to either settle down and have kids as soon as you can, or to get out of Perth as soon as you can.
Yes.
And I was the latter.
Yeah. Would you call yourself a proud West Australian nowadays?
Oh, definitely. And I think the more that I work and explore and run tours and things overseas, the more clear you are about where you are when you move away from it.
Yes.
So the more exploration I do overseas, energy-wise, the more I realise how unique the energy here in Perth is. And I really think Perth's just starting to come into its own.
Yes.
In terms of, spiritual community and development and consciousness as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. We're just hitting our
starting
strides.
to chip it.
Yeah.
And I think, certainly through this, I meet more and more people who are willing to accept and allow their spirituality and then, like yourself, go further into expressing it and put it out there. And I soon see more and more of that. See more people want to come onto things like my podcast and want to actually talk and have it captured and shared.
I think, you know, the traditional framework in Perth is very much built around the conservative values.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, I grew up Christian, I went to Catholic school, all of that, and I think a lot of us did. But there's something that's really swelling within people, and it's not so much about wanting to become spiritual or wanting to be more conscious. It's not even that. I think it's kind of arises from a dissatisfaction with what's on offer.
Yes.
And people can't always pinpoint that as it's something around spirituality or it's something around consciousness or becoming more aware. It's just that irritation sometimes.
It just is.
Exactly.
And just irritating.
And that's an interesting framework in itself, because people don't necessarily put irritation and spirituality in the same category.
No.
And yet it's so often right there, right in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about what's happening now, because these younger generations coming through are quite comfortable with their irritation. And so they're sort of claiming more their right to be irritated.
I like that.
And seeing that as an ignition for more consciousness and being more conscious.
We do tend to move more out of pain than towards bigger, wholesome pleasure.
That's true.
We will get comfortable and complacent by holding on to the pleasure longer than we need to, but by and large we only move when it's out of pain.
Exactly.
And irritation will be a pain.
Exactly. So when you're in irritation or pain and you're looking for safety, traditionally people have gone to, you know, concepts of spirituality. But now I think what's happening is that anything that you stay in for too long becomes so uncomfortable, you have to keep shifting all the time now.
Yeah.
And this is the new challenge for any kind of practice
quicker
or paradigm.
and quicker shifting.
Absolutely. Because it's, you know, we see this, you know, contextualized in our everyday life in terms of consumerism. We're interested in this, we're interested in this, we're interested in this. Same thing's happening with our beliefs.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting times because things are moving very, very fast. Very fast. And it's hard to stay attached to anything.
Yes. Let's get on the train.
Yeah.
Or you'll be dragged along by the train.
Your irritation will push you out really quick.
Awesome. So, you are a channel and you share information that comes to you, and we're going to dive into that and what that means and how that came about in a minute. But if I sort of, bit like my intro, chunk up, you know, there's a real sense of receiving information and having the bravery to go out there and share it. Where does that come from in the Rebecca story? Is that something that was there in childhood, role model, or is it something that's
well, I think that I was growing up Catholic was an interesting framework for me. I'll say interesting.
I'll leave it at that.
Because my grandparents were extremely Catholic, my parents were, my friends were, but there was something in me that didn't make sense or fit with that.
So what does extremely Catholic look and feel like?
Very, very devout. Very much referring any kind of unknowns or questions, just have faith. And so for me as a child, I translated that as don't ask questions.
Yes.
And I had a pretty active mind when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could see the value in what it had offered my family because there was a great deal of comfort that they could find in that community. But for me, with an active mind, I was always pushing beyond that. And of course, I had certain capacities and senses that couldn't be explained by that theology. So, you know, I had the ability to see energy fields and inside the body and beyond time, right from the time I was quite young.
Right.
So how does that work? How do you explain that within what I had been learning? And it was very, very difficult. So my mother actually was really, really switched on, and by the time I was about 9, she realised that I needed something else. So I'll always be grateful to her. She met some very dear friends that became great friends of the family and got involved in something called the Theosophy Society.
Right.
And they had kind of a tie-in with Catholicism through the liberal Catholic Church, which was kind of like Catholicism, but there was reincarnation and there was ascended masters and there were all these other aspects. So that was kind of the go-between. And so from about the age of 9, I was going to meditation classes and study groups and things like this to try and...
That's here in Perth, obviously.
Yeah, it was. I'm pretty sure it still exists, but I'm not quite sure where because I haven't been involved for some time. And that was a great foundation for me. And I became aware that channeling existed through that.
Right.
Not something I ever aspired to. Not something I ever believed had anything to do with me per se. I never had any personal aspirations because that was a very hierarchical framework. It had that in common with the church.
Yes, there's someone between you and God.
That's right, exactly. And so I thought, okay, well, this helps explain things a little bit better to me. But in terms of what I'm doing here on the planet, I'm going to do something really practical. Which had nothing to do with channeling, because channeling's the least practical thing that you could do.
On paper.
Of course. So that really didn't unfold for me until I was 18, 19, 20. So I was studying at UWA, I was doing architecture. Yeah. And I was really quite happy with that avenue. I used to like pubs and bands and all of that kind of stuff.
You got your life mapped out ahead.
Yeah, it was all good. And then one day it all changed very, very quickly and suddenly. And I had an experience where I became the marshmallow man, I call it. I became so expanded that my head felt like it was 50 feet wide. And another voice started expressing through me and time disappeared and
where were you?
And there it was. I was on my lounge room floor with my sister, who had just broken up with her boyfriend, and I was consoling her. And all of a sudden, here was this conversation about her and her boyfriend and why all of this had happened. And came out of that and thought, holy cow, let's just tuck that away for a little while and get back to business.
Yeah.
Get back to my studies.
Was it almost like just take over?
Yes.
Right.
And the reality was I couldn't go back to my studies because on that day, what happened was that it blew all of my senses open and I couldn't go back to normal functioning after that. My brain didn't work in the same way. I would walk into a lecture theatre and I could see everybody's energy field. I could hear everybody's history. I couldn't focus. I couldn't remember anything that I'd learnt half an hour ago. And I guess I went through an internal crisis of sorts.
Could you talk to people about this?
I did have some people I could talk to about it. And I'll get onto that in a little bit, actually, because that's another whole unfolding.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I've got.
But after a couple of months of that, I just decided that I couldn't continue studying at that time. So I got a couple of jobs and went overseas. Right. Disappeared for a couple of years. Went over to England and thought I'd try and use some of these skills in a place where nobody knows me.
Right. So was that the point when you kind of like, this isn't going away?
Yeah.
Perth might not necessarily be the best place for me to explore this.
Well, you can't, I had a great sense of financial responsibility as well, to myself.
Yeah.
And to what I perceived to be a viable future.
Right.
You can't make a living doing stuff like that, can you?
I don't know, it's a good question I'm going to ask you in a bit. And we'll come to that
Well, this is where I was.
Yeah.
So I thought, I better just go away for a while, get this out of my system.
Was that what you thought?
Yeah, I thought I'll go and play with it a bit, I'll exercise the muscle a bit, and then I'll come back and my brain will start working again.
And then we'll get back on with this architecture business.
Yeah, of course.
And what happened in London?
I was actually in Essex and Cambridge, a bit north of there. I did a bit of ghost busting and a few little channeling groups and things like that. But actually I was quite miserable. Right. I felt very isolated. I thought that it would be easier to find support and a community in a place that didn't know me. And what I realised is at that time it was kind of difficult anyway.
Yeah. But
the difficulty wasn't just this topic. The difficulty was my age.
Right.
Because I was 19, 20.
Yeah. So it's easy just to pass you off as...
Who's going to encourage someone that age to be a channeler? No one.
I take it you didn't find a mentor or something.
Correct. Tried really hard, wrote a lot of letters, travelled to a lot of obscure places to meet people.
Yeah.
Contacted people I knew here. And the general consensus was, you're not ready, you don't know what you're doing, you're too young, this is dangerous. But I didn't know how to turn it off. Which was really interesting.
So, when that first occurred, you turned out and it felt like the marshmallow man. Was it scary?
It wasn't scary. What was disconcerting was that I couldn't decide when it was happening and when it wasn't happening.
Right.
So I hadn't yet learned how to work in synergy with it, to move into agreement with it. So I didn't have a conscious choice. Like it could happen in the middle of a crowded room.
Just start talking.
Yeah, or just move into that state where you become hyper aware of everything. And that's super inconvenient when you're at a gig in a pub. You know?
Or a library.
Of course. Well, a library's not so bad because at least you can just, you know, hold back your speech a bit, but you're still in that expanded state. So really it was the difficulty of not being able to, I don't want to use the word control it, but not be able to be in real partnership with it.
Yes.
And that's what took time.
That must have been
that's
scary.
What took time.
Or disconcerting, or...
Disorientating.
Right.
Disorientating. Because, and my understanding of channeling has changed so much over the years too. I think there's something to be said for what you believe something to be is generally what you experience. So what I believed it to be at the time was another entity comes into you. And there's a lot around that. You know, there's questions of sovereignty and there's questions of, well, how do you know that this is valid? Discernment, all of these things. You know, so there's a lot to think about.
How do you know it's good?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
is it going to leave?
Exactly.
When do I get me back?
Exactly. But having, you know, done this for over 20 years now, 25 years now, my understanding of channeling is completely different.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you that specific.
And I think
question.
the framework within which you do something will dictate your experience of it. So now my understanding is different.
That right there is quite powerful in and of itself. If we just pause for a moment to consider that, you know, what your definition of something to be will be what you experience. And that doesn't matter whether it's channeling or anything.
That's right. And then if we move beyond that a little bit, if we move into a sense of safety with not knowing, then we really get to explore beyond.
Did you think you were going mad at any point in this?
Yes.
Because what we're talking about here is probably, you know, from a societal norm, right on the boundary of this bloke, woman, lady, whoever is with it or not with it.
In terms of how I used to believe channeling was, yes. In terms of what I believe channeling to be now, I think it's a normal human capacity.
So go on then. What is channeling then?
Well, I used to believe, based on my previous hierarchical understanding of consciousness, spirituality, God, whatever you want to call it, that it's bringing something greater than you through.
Yes.
Like a funnel.
Yes.
So you're distilling in many ways. Now I understand that we're all connected to the one source. And what we're really doing now is we're tapping into that and we're actually bringing it out.
Right.
So we're actually expanding out from a center point, which is a completely different way of looking at channeling. And it means that it's inherent in everybody. Everybody has that connection within. And it also means that every human on this planet has the same ability to access
because that was going
all of that wisdom.
That's answered another question. Do you believe this is something everybody can do.
Yeah. And that's principally why I do it in such a public way.
Right. Not to be the person with the message, but to be the beacon of the fact that you can do this.
Of course. Because I've got nothing to offer anybody really, other than to be a demonstration that it's everybody's right to access information.
See, this... So I've long held the belief that... Well, let me give you an example. I have long thought that the whole business of the internet is quite a ruse at some points, because what it's asking you to, what it's reinforcing, is that there's a whole body of knowledge out there that you access via a iPhone or a computer, and you use Google as the interface and do. But there's a whole internet of stuff that lives within us and that in us and around us that we can access.
Definitely.
And where I believe that the earlier ruse was religion had us believe that God was outside of us, where I believe it's inside of us. I think the internet is the next ruse that makes us believe that all the information... am I going to channel down that the bus down the corner is going to be there at 8:52? Well, maybe not, I don't know. But the bigger questions that we are starting to ask ourselves out of our irritation.
Yes. What else?
Yeah. You're not going to get those answers on Google. Or if you do, it's somebody else's point of view, coming through their framework, their reference, their cognitive schema that they've built up throughout their life, their whole sense of identity.
Yeah, second-hand information.
Yeah. And you're seeing it through their eyes, whereas, I right down to the idea of self-development means that myself needs to be developed. I think it's more self-exploration and self-revealment.
Wonderful to hear you say that.
Yeah. And this is why I was so keen to talk to you, because right at the start, it would be so easy to go, oh yeah, right, so this Rebecca lady's a channel, that sounds like a fucking nuts thing. All right, and then I'll pass you off really quickly for anybody to do. And that's why I chunked it up at the start to the essence of accessing information that's within and then having the bravery to share it.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I will take this information because I can reference Google. and then I abdicate responsibility. And it's not really me. And it's not really me finding much more about me and my values and what I'm about and why I'm put here and what's my core vibrational frequency that is me. Same as yours is you. And so, delving into that to learn more about it, I found has given me more fun learning about me by asking me the right questions, like you do with Google. You ask the right question, you get the right answer. Ask yourself the right questions, you get loads of great answers. But from that, it's then bringing it up and bringing it out.
Yeah, now that's the tricky bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, when I first started channeling, it was an entire exercise in bravery itself every time it happened, because my belief around it then was that I had to step aside.
Yeah. And
I have to step aside and trust whatever's coming through. Now, I went through an experience for about 6 or 7 years doing that in the beginning when I was
So this is
pretty
from
young.
the London
onwards.
So
18 to 25 or something, where what would happen was that I would step aside and I would literally feel myself moving to the back of my head, and then this energy would come through and information would come. But what was happening was it would come into my mind first as a thought, and then it would get expressed. And what I was doing was actually very clunky and mechanical, because the thought would come and then I would kind of like cross-reference it. So I'd go, oh, yeah,
so
no, that's good.
Mind's
Yeah,
in
that's
there
not
doing
good.
Stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, that doesn't make sense. And most of the time it would just flow. But I hit a snag.
Right.
When information started flowing that didn't match what my brain already knew.
Yeah.
and was counterintuitive to beliefs that I'd accumulated. That's when it got interesting, because that's where I had to go through an experience where I was completely willing to to not have my brain, mind, or ego or memory banks involved at all in what was being discussed. And that's when it got interesting, because that's when all of the new information started coming through that we've been writing about now for a while, about this new paradigm and how the mechanics of reality work different. We're moving from third dimensional to multi-dimensional, and how all the chakra system and the body's changing. And a lot of that information, actually not really many other people are still talking about, because a lot of people who are bringing messages to the planet, in my view, are still referencing them against what they already know.
Right.
Older systems of knowledge. And I really think we are looking for something new.
We'll deep dive into that.
Yeah.
In a minute. So you're in the 7-year period.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, even as I think and try and embody what you're saying, you go from one confronting experience at the start to then another confronting experience of going, I'm going to make a conscious decision, just get out of the way. And just free flow.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite lucky because I had a great group of friends and family who I used to sit with every Thursday night in my living room at home for years to get comfortable with that. And I only really came out of the closet in probably about 5 or 6 years ago.
Right. So you'd been doing this
in a more public way.
So you've been doing this for 10, 15 years?
Or longer, yeah. Longer than
Sorry, 10, 15 years before that?
Yeah. So I only really came out more publicly more recently because I really feel very strongly that the information is very useful to people.
So how did you go about, like earlier on you talked about, I have to not do architecture anymore, I need to go away because... So what did you do for 10 or 15 years to put bread on the table?
That was really interesting. So, I did all kinds of shit, really. I mean, I was a barista for a while, I worked in cafes,
you didn't go back to architectural
retail.
studies?
Oh, I went back and I just couldn't, my brain just couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle the linearity and the attention to detail.
Linearity, I like that.
I actually couldn't cognite things in that way anymore.
Right.
So, and I used to be really awesome at, visual, spatial, recognition. And, loved maths at school, all of that. And it was gone. That part of me just wasn't functioning anymore. So it was terribly sad and I felt like a bit of a failure. But I sort of went...
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're all the skills of normality, so to speak, societal norms. And they're all the skills that will, traditionally been painted the picture of this will how you get a good job.
Of course.
You're good at maths, you do engineering or architecture.
Both my parents are teachers, including my dad, who was a maths and physics teacher. So this was a tragedy. It was terribly upsetting for me personally.
Yeah,
because that was my groove. That was my value.
Yeah, that's up there at the identity level. I am Rebecca. I am good at maths.
Good at stuff like this.
I've got this shit trained down.
Yeah. No.
So you had all sorts of jobs during this time.
Oh yeah, I did retail and retail management for a bit, and then I met someone when I was 23, who was moving away. That was a crazy story. And said, do you want to come with me? I was moving to Bali. So on a whim, I said yes. And I actually spent 2 years sitting in Bali doing absolutely nothing. No radio, TV, aircon, car, internet, phone. And that was awesome because that's what enabled me to get really comfortable in that brain space.
Right.
Yeah. So I did nothing for 2 years, as in nothing. But that's when I had my real... that was a very, very valuable, precious time for me. And I was aware of it at the time that I would never have that opportunity again, and I really took full advantage of it. And that's when I had my oneness experiences and could never go back to metaphysics after that.
How was this received by friends and family and those closest to you during the journey?
I think my family's always been pretty aware. My mum uses the word eccentric to describe me, and I think they kind of are very supportive of whatever I choose, so I'm very lucky.
Yeah.
And also because I think I've got such good focus, I tend to make a success of anything that I do.
Right.
So I don't think they've ever worried about me.
Right. Like a cat will always land on her feet.
Yeah, because if anyone can do it, I can, right? Sometimes that's a bit annoying that people have that attitude towards me, because then when you feel like you're drowning, everybody's like, she's fine.
No, I need some help. What about friends?
I've got a great community here in Perth. I tell you what, people here in Perth are really switched on.
Switched on?
Oh. If people here in Perth, in terms of how far they're willing to push the envelope in terms of knowledge and belief systems, are really, really cutting edge. And I'm so grateful to the community and the energy of people here in Perth, because I think some of the most amazing content that we've ever been able to bring out has happened with these people here. So I believe that Perth is on the cutting edge energetically, and I think in the next 10 to 15 years, Perth will be a real centre point for people from all over the world to come. Because there's a lot going on here, but a lot of it's kind of behind the scenes at the moment.
Yes.
People are having these experiences here and these understandings and awarenesses here. It's quite extraordinary. And what I also love about the consciousness here in Perth with people is that they are natural explorers. Maybe that's to do with our isolation.
By the very nature of being here.
Yeah. But also they're willing to ask the questions. It's more about the joy of the exploration than the safety of the answer.
Oh, I love that.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
I love that.
And
The
that's
safety of the answer.
Yeah.
I'm going to be taking that.
Yeah. So, for a long time in Perth, I was doing regular channeling events.
Yeah.
And then the community here would just, so what else you got? What else you got? What else you got? And after a while, I'd be thinking, holy moly, like, what else is there?
Yeah.
And that's when I go overseas for a bit.
Yeah. It's going to tap in something else.
Because it's,
Yeah.
because they're always pushing the envelope, which is awesome. Yeah. So it's good. Happy to be back in Perth.
So when did you decide that no longer would we be working in like retail management or barista or something like that, that you were going to make this what I do?
Well, my most recent job, I had a kid.
Another level.
We have a baby. I had an adult in a kid's body. I was out of traditional work for a little while, and that gave me a chance to really get back into the channeling again, because I had a little bit more personal time to do that. But I actually got into reception work because I was like, I've got to get a job. Things are a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
I'm going to go work a few days a week in a reception job, and I ended up in a healing practice in Fremantle, and then through a friend there, I went into the biggest natural therapy clinic here in Perth as a receptionist. But I had quite a good connection with the woman who still runs that clinic, who's incredibly intuitive, and was seeing a lot of the energetic changes that I was seeing, because I was mapping them, I was drawing them all out, and she was too. She was very quiet about it, but she was too.
Yeah.
So one thing led to another, and soon I wasn't a receptionist, I was a practitioner in there. So I moved from doing, I guess, more low-key work to actually getting to do what I wanted to do, which was cool. And then I got so busy, and so many people wanted to see me who weren't in Perth and were overseas, that I decided to move out of that setting and just work online and travel, which is what I do now. And also because I felt that within a clinic setting, it was principally around solving people's problems. And I wasn't really into doing that much anymore.
So what do you do now then?
On a practical level?
Yeah, sort of.
So what do? I do online sessions for people all around the place. So that's all through the website. I do online seminars and webinars. I do workshops here in Perth and everywhere else. I started running tours a few years ago, and that was awesome.
Tours where?
Oh, anywhere on a map that exists or doesn't exist that I get directed to go.
Right.
So we've done Greece a couple of times, but on the Albanian border where it goes. Egypt, Tunisia. I've done one around Canada, Indonesia, up a site that's not a mountain, that's something else, in Java. So I've got a little bit of Indiana Jones in me.
So with the webinar and the events, is that you channeling information?
Mm-hmm.
Do you teach people to channel?
I have run some workshops before where we talk about the principles behind that. What I find now is that when people really engage with me, that starts to happen for them anyway.
Right.
Because they move into a resonance that ignites that within them. So a lot of clients that I have had over the years, I don't even like that word, a lot of people I've had conversations with over the years and co-created with are now doing what I do.
Right.
Which is awesome. And a lot of people are doing this and still have their careers or creations that they had started before, but they just bring a different creative element to it now. Yeah.
So let's talk a bit of nuts and bolts here. So when do you like go into a trance state? Do you like this, or is it? Do you consciously just bring it on?
Yep.
Or da?
Yeah. So it's moved from that understanding that I have to step aside. I'm not really in control. This is somebody else's show. I'm just a host. To integrating so much with universal source energy that I can now tap into any source of information. So sometimes it comes out as a particular persona or aspect, other times it's a completely different set of wisdom or knowledge or information. It's like the ultimate library. And I've got the pass.
Because you spend time.
Well, the reality is that every human on the planet has a pass to the library. But what happens is that because of our beliefs and conditioning, we believe we've only got access to a shelf with 6 books on it. And that's all we do, is we read those 6 books. In reality, we've got this whole library. But we don't think we've got permission to explore it because we think we have to either earn the right, be more knowledgeable, be more conscious.
Go on a course, do this.
Work
Somebody
your way
else.
up there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about the economy on the planet, we know that information and data is the most valuable, monetary-wise, commodity on the planet. Why is that? Because there's this whole belief set up that you have to earn the right to access information. Is that really true?
That's another level of the ruse, isn't it?
Yeah. Is that the greatest mistruth of all? You know, the internet, let's look at the internet. The internet is, in my view, a demonstration externally of how our information systems really work within us and between us as a species. So now we have this understanding that it's possible out here. For me,
Yes.
that's the precursor. Hey, this is how the system really works in here.
And taking what you said right at the very start, if you expand that to being your beliefs about reality, then it will be so.
Yeah. Because we are masters of our own reality. But how do we know that we've got the right to do that? Because the biggest thing I come up against in people is this sense of humility that comes with awareness and this sense of spirituality. There's a humility, but there also has to be a self-righteousness.
You got to have a yin to your yang.
Because if you don't have self-righteousness, you never give yourself permission to have it all, to access it all, to be it all. There's that humility that's so embedded in our belief systems that says you don't get to have it all. You can have this much until you've developed enough, or so a lot of times you get these most beautiful, compassionate, wonderful, wise people who sort of say, well, who am I to think that I could do that or have that? There's this humility that is just holds people back. And it's not to say that being self-righteous is an egoic thing. It's just knowing that if you are part of the one, then of course it's your right to access everything.
And you are part of the one because you're here.
Of course. So it's fascinating stuff.
Step into that.
Yeah, I mean, you can have people who work within, energetic medicine or, psychology or metaphysics, whatever it is, so knowledgeable. But the one thing that I always see that holds people back is they don't believe that they've got the right to have access to everything. And where does that come from? Everything we see externally. Right?
Yeah.
Got to earn your way there. That's the number one thing I heard from my external world when I started channeling. Is you don't have the right to do this. You haven't earned your way there. Who do you think you are?
You're too,
What do you know?
You mentioned right at the start that dropped out a reference to ascended masters.
Don't really like that term much.
No. Just somebody who's trying to get their head around this, what would you say is the difference between channeling and mediumship? Because the traditional view of medium is certainly for me.
Good question.
An old lady with a crystal ball, and everyone holds hands and come in, Uncle Derek, tell us where the gold's hot.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like channeling. Oh, sorry, this sounds very crude, and I apologise if it does. Channeling dead people.
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
I've had one or two experiences of that. It wasn't voluntary.
So that would be the difference. So that would be like dead people as opposed to source energy and.
Well, everything energetically exists as an imprint. Every memory exists as an imprint. And my view of that now is that you access those imprints of memory.
Right. And they all exist.
Of course. Everything that was ever created still exists.
And is there for us to explore.
It's there, it's accessible. It's not my favourite thing to do. I'm more interested in the bigger questions and the macroscopic view.
Yeah.
But, there's people that are really, really great at it, and it assists a lot of people, and it's very, very helpful in times of stress and trauma, and I think they do a fantastic job.
Right.
I had a go at that once or twice. I didn't enjoy it very much.
Yeah. So, are there characters that you sort of channel, or I've seen on your website names?
Yes, I started out, I guess, identifying different threads of knowledge in terms of personas, because that's how they presented it. Right. That's how it was presented through me.
In order for it to
be distinguishable as one stream of information, as distinguishable to another stream of information. So that's how it came through for me in the beginning. Now I feel it more as a group energy.
Right.
So sometimes that energy will very deliberately distinguish itself through an identity.
Yes.
Depending on who's listening, for their reference.
Yeah.
Or comfort, or what have you. It tends to be more often than not these days that this is the information.
What are some of the themes that have come through? Because you've always been doing this for 20 years. Have they changed, evolved, or have they remained quite consistent?
Well, I mean, I think in the first 10 or 15 years it was largely personal. So it was really about whatever person came to see me, this is about you, your history, your story, your development, your journey. And the last 10 years or so, it hasn't been about that at all.
Right.
In fact, we don't do a lot of personal stuff anymore. Even when people come and have a personal channeling session with us, we take it out to the bigger picture.
You said us.
Did I?
I like that.
Well, it's a team effort.
Yeah.
We take it out to the bigger picture, and then what generally happens is that people leave feeling like they've got a completely different view. And all of the little questions they had at the beginning seem completely irrelevant. So the general theme, I guess, in the last 10 years has been the paradigm shift and the shift on the planet between third dimensional reality into fifth dimensional and multidimensional reality, what that does to the timelines, what that does to the systems on the planet, how that changes the mechanics of how we manifest and create things, because it's completely different, how that changes the energy systems in the body, how the DNA is changing, how the nervous system is changing. We just did a webinar on the nervous system and the brain this morning, how that's all changing and what are the physical symptoms for that. How things work.
Yeah.
Because they don't work the same that they used to. And what often happens is people who are really good at managing things in that older vibrational paradigm suddenly don't do it so well anymore, and they think there's something wrong with themselves. Like the first time we start to really talk about the chakra system changing, I can't tell you how many Reiki practitioners got in contact with us and said, I'm ready to quit because I'm terrible at this. Not realizing that everything had shifted. As soon as they understood that everything had shifted, off they went, explored it further.
What is this shift?
What is it?
Yeah.
It's basically a shift from one reality to another.
And explain the reality.
One dimension to another. That's a big conversation.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
That's okay. I want me to break it down really simply.
Summarise it,
okay.
yeah.
So basically...
Because obviously if anybody wants to deep dive into this, they can go to your website.
Yeah, I mean, there's heaps of articles, books, videos, whatever. So basically...
But the entry level,
the
summary
entry
version.
level is that third dimensional paradigm is all based on separation, duality, cause and effect.
Yes.
And what we're moving into now is not about that. It's not about linearity. It's not about process. It's not about one direction or journey. We're becoming multi-directional, multi-capacitous, multi-influential in the directions that we move in. And so the mechanics of how things work are completely different. So the way in which we manifest, we can't manifest with thought anymore. We can only manifest with feeling state. We don't necessarily have to finish things off before we start anything new. That's the end of the cyclical nature of the karmic system. We're losing our memory and our influence from the past in terms of the decisions that we make moving forward. We don't have to finish things we start. That's a big one. Because just starting. We're just igniting. There are completely new systems that are being developed on the planet at this time because the old systems are not being supported energetically anymore.
Can you give an example?
There are new systems for communication. There are new systems with economy that people are starting to play with now. There's new political systems that are forming. Some of these are not, well, most of them are not really out and about in the public eye yet. And people are generally becoming a lot more switched on in terms of what they're seeing. So we've got much more of a peripheral vision now than ever before. So our capacity to know things is changing. Our capacity to sense things is changing. But the biggest thing here is we're losing our sense of individual identity.
That's certainly becoming more malleable and fluid. And one of the consistent things that, amongst many themes that show up in the series of these podcasts, has been when people have had almost a crisis at an identity level.
Yeah.
Shifts of identity.
Yeah.
And how that identity, I am Bryn and I am this. And then all of a sudden all the evidence comes and it's like, and then the light slap comes and it's like, well, you're not quite like that.
Or you were for 5 minutes, but now you're something else.
Yeah.
This is like the belief systems, they just keep changing because vibrationally the planet keeps shifting. So nothing like an individual identity is sustainable at the moment. We have to keep reassessing that all the time. And really, when that happens and that cause and effect distance collapses, we don't have reference points for feedback anymore that reinforce who we think we are.
Mm.
Like before, you would get consistent feedback. You do this work, you get that feedback. You express yourself in this way, you get that feedback. All of a sudden, we're sitting in this vacuum and there's no echo. So what happens then?
Yeah.
People panic. They feel isolated. They feel like they're not having any effect or impact anymore. They don't know what their purpose is because they can't see the effect of their presence. They begin to think that they're failing or they're terrible at what they do. But what's actually happening is that that echo effect's being taken away so that we can actually start to focus back here.
Inside.
Yeah. Because this is where all the action is right now.
Right down to that core source.
Exactly.
Energy that we're all made of.
Exactly. So the shift in paradigm at the moment is popping this in this void space. We're sitting in between. This is how we view it. And this is our opportunity to say, well, the only thing I really know for sure right now is that I exist. That's it.
And that'll do, right?
And that'll do. Because in that moment, that's the agreement, and that's when you can start filling up that space again. It strips everything down so that new things can be created.
And go from here.
Exactly.
The heart.
Yeah. So, massive identity crisis for everybody. I've had at least 5 this year already.
One before breakfast.
Oh, yeah. I had one yesterday.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What was that?
Oh, what is the relevance of any of this? I'm here in Perth. I'm here in this house. What is the relevance? I cannot see the effect of anything that I have produced. I cannot see the impact of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of channeling. I cannot see what this is for. And again, there's no echo. Got to go back. What do I know? Well, I'm here. And then everything resets.
Did you have that yesterday?
Pardon?
Did you have that yesterday?
I had that yesterday.
So yesterday, I and a good friend, Lachlan Samuel, who does the Open Up podcast, which is about making mental health mainstream, both of us, 100 plus episodes, were asked to talk at Perth Podcasting Week because we're one of the few people who reached that milestone. And we had to explain to people that when you first start doing podcasting, you're looking at the downloads, you're looking at the likes, you're looking at this, you're looking at that, you're looking for the echo, you're looking for the feedback.
Yeah.
And what we had to explain to people is after a short period of time, you'll go nuts if you keep doing that. Mm-hmm. And you just have to let it go. And what you have to realise is that you're doing a number of things. So for me, it's been refining the craft of being able to have these conversations, be comfortable in them and have a structure to them, but also the structure allows me to go here, there and everywhere and ask the questions that I want and be brave enough to ask those questions and sit in silence, all the stuff, the craft as I call it, digging into the story and pulling out the golden nuggets. That's what it is. But also it's building up a catalogue. And when it's right, someone will come and find it. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's very easy to go, oh, what the hell is WA Real doing? Or it's just doing something.
What's the purpose?
It's doing something. Half the time I know what it's about and half the time I don't. And as soon as I think I do, then something new turns up.
Yes. It's the same with what I do. See, we're doing the same things, right? We're creating almost spontaneously, but we don't really know what it's for.
Yeah.
That's a leap of faith every time, isn't it?
Tell you what I do know is the Bryn that clicked record before I did the whole hello and welcome back to WA, I'm your host Bryn will be energetically different to the Bryn that hit stop. Mm-hmm. By the very nature of the fact I've just done this.
Yeah.
and co-created it with someone else.
Yeah, like it's the co-creation, right?
Yeah.
We're sitting in our own sphere of reality.
It's kind of interesting.
It is. It's good that you can feel that.
Yeah, it's interesting that happened for you yesterday at the same time that I was essentially trying to... I didn't do it on purpose, it just came out that just chill out, just do for do's sake.
Yeah. Because, you know, it's collective experience.
And what I'm beginning to realise now is that catalogue, well, it's out there for anybody to access if they want. That catalogue is also me building and building and building a framework of understanding.
Yeah.
For my essence to flow through.
A library.
Yeah. For me to flow through.
That's cool.
And so when that flows through, there's quite a wide way of coming out and expressing, and for those that might need it or whatever it's needed to be.
It's very cool.
Yeah. Thank you. How does... So we talked about the great stuff of you know, putting the messages out there and now this being your work and creates a livelihood for you, etc., etc. How does Rebecca use channeling on a day-to-day basis just for herself? How is it? Is it a useful tool as well?
No.
No. Oh,
not in the way I've experienced
I'll move on to the next
it.
question.
Not in the way I've experienced it. I mean, a lot of people have said, oh, you should channel for yourself when you get stuck. And I used to chastise myself quite a lot that I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
But the reality is that I've come to realise that the reason I've had so much personal drama and angst in my life, yes, I'm saying that,
Yeah.
is because I have to have an experience of what it is to be in the human condition to be able to talk about it.
Building
Of
the
course.
framework.
Of course.
Yeah.
Also because every time I'm going through personal disruption, that's the topic that gets spoken about, and that's what everybody else is experiencing as well. So I'm kind of like the sacrificial lamb, if you know what I mean. It took me quite a while to figure that out, because I used to think within the old frameworks, you know, of Christianity and theosophy, that if things weren't going right in your inverted commas in your life, there was some correction that was required. And what I've come to realize is that that's the demonstration of being human, because you can be divine and human. And I have to tell you, I have disillusioned many a person who have come across me and expect me to be illuminated in so many ways.
Oh yeah, and
I'm
elevated
human.
and, you know, move yourself from one place to another.
Of course, I'm human. I swear I like a glass of wine occasionally. I don't believe that mistakes are made, because everything is a divine expression. But you're going to be very disappointed when you meet me in person if you expect me to be holier than thou. But this is what it is to be human on earth at this time.
Yeah.
And this is what it is to be a conscious human.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that's happened to me recently, and I've just been asked to move the conversation in this direction. Sorry, I know this is your show, but we're just being directed in this way. Is that
So now we're not just talking to Rebecca.
Is that what I realized was that there can't be a separation anymore. This is just the last 2.5 years. There can't be a separation anymore between what we express and how we live. So there's been a lot of talk about not compromising your own desires and not compromising what brings you joy, and moving out of a paradigm where you always put others before yourself and where compassion is sacrificial. And a lot of the times I was giving seminars and lectures around the world on these topics. The personality in me is getting uncomfortable that we're going down this line, but this is what's happening.
Cool.
Is I realized that it was all very well to tell people that they had permission to choose what works for them and not concern themselves so much about the happiness of others. But I wasn't doing that for myself in my own personal life. And so in my own personal life in the last 2 years, I've had a complete, I won't call it a collapse, I will say a complete refurbishment. Because I'd come to a point in my own personal expression that wasn't walking the talk of what we were talking about. So even though we were talking about serenity and talking about acting from the inner knowing, there was still an awful lot of energy that was going into the everyday maintenance of life and what I'd already created. So the last 2 years for me has been a big shift and transition into, if we talk about this as a belief, then you actually have to live this in your life to know that it's true. It's not enough to do theory anymore. That's when it gets a little bit hairy.
Shit, yes.
Yeah. So the last couple of years for me have been really, really challenging because my personal life is kind of on display. I am quite a private person, but I tend to get used as a demonstration a lot in a lot of the seminars and workshops that we do. And I've really just had to walk the talk, which has been very, very interesting. Very interesting. It's the one thing to play with information, it's another thing to actually
do it, live
use
it, embody it.
Yeah.
Good. So that kind of also answers the question of, so how does Rebecca use this stuff?
Well, that's where we were going. So it's not so much about channeling to myself. It's okay. It's all right. Well, if this is the principle, if this is how it works now in this reality, if compassion is now about understanding how the other person feels without moving into that space with them, if leadership is now about just seeing the path in front of you and everybody else can just get behind you and follow, then these are the things that you can be active in demonstrating in your life. So.
Interesting you use the word leadership. It's come up for me a lot recently. See, I since a young boy, I always struggled where there was vacuums and I felt I had to fill them. Leadership, directional stuff. But more and more I see a lack of leadership around, and so now it's like, oh fuck it, I'm just going to do it myself.
Yeah.
You know, more and more the things we look towards, even on a bigger scale, you know, politicians, governments and stuff, that's crumbling. You know, you can't switch on the TV without, John's going to go please.
Because it's not really leadership, it's maintenance.
It is.
It's the maintenance of what was already created.
Yeah, this is now creaking. But yes, the whole thing of leadership's been quite a thing for me recently.
Yeah. Leadership, I think, is when you're willing to look out ahead into an empty space and move out into it, because there's nobody else out there. If you're heading towards a target, it's already been done.
What would WA look like if we all started touching our own essence and trying to channel it?
I think that we'd be far more cohesive in the way in which we create things. I think a lot of people in Perth, from my experience, are trying to create things within themselves and then trying to get people on board. But there's not a lot of shared creation, in my view. I think there's community, but there's not really a lot of shared creation. And I think, well, in my limited experience, that comes down to someone comes up with an idea, people get on board and agree with it, but they don't really want responsibility for what happens. So I think the fear of responsibility is a big one. And I think that the joy of creation in general is about an ambivalence to the effect. And I think that there's great potential.
Which goes back to starting stuff.
Yes, there's great potential for more creation to happen in Perth. But, you know, I think it's the same anywhere in the world. People are interested in self-survival.
Because we're running around
maintaining stuff.
Yeah, and working on a theory of lack.
Yeah.
And I suppose it goes all the way back to self-development, and it's out there, it's not here, I need to grab it, I need to get it, I need to look after myself.
Yeah, but you know, there's the other side of that too. There's the flip side, is that if you are seen to be doing quite well, you lose your support. from external sources anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're all right. You got loads of money. What the...
Oh, you're doing fine. Yeah, well, I'm going to go now explore someone who's struggling, which is really interesting.
What have you learned about yourself in this journey?
What have I unlearned about myself?
All right. Answer that one and then answer the other. And then after unlearning, what have you...
I think the biggest one I'm playing with at the moment is lack of purpose and how freeing that can be. Because I've always felt since I was a young child that I'm here for the benefit of others.
Yeah.
But that's a trap for me.
Why is that?
Because that's a sacrificial approach. It has been. That's how it's played out in my life.
Yes.
As long as everybody else is fine, I should be happy.
Yeah. Which is what you were talking about.
Classic martyr. As many females are, So I think the most valuable thing that I've unlearned about myself is that I have a set reason to be here. Because if I remove that sense of purpose, I have more freedom to explore.
That's gold.
So that to me is the biggest thing now.
How much is it out there drilled in? What's your why? What's your purpose?
It's in everything. It's in every aspect of spirituality even right down to the only reason you're here is for presence. That's still purpose.
You're here for
presence.
Yeah.
Presence on the planet. To hold the vibration, to raise consciousness. That's still purpose. What happens if I'm not present? Did I stuff it up? So I'm actually playing with...
So that's what you're unlearning.
Yeah, I'm unlearning.
Playing with unraveling.
I'm unlearning, and I'm playing with the art of unknowing. What happens when I don't know? Because especially with what I do, information is what I appear to be doing. Information. So what happens if the information has no value? Or you can't attach to the information, or the information is wrong, or the information is irrelevant, or it doesn't meet somebody's needs. It's so loaded with expectation and purpose. But what if it's just an expression? Obviously it has some effect, of course. But if I remove the purpose out of what I do, it just makes it so much more lyrical, and it gives me the courage to explore deeper within it, because then I'm not afraid of who I'm upsetting. Like when we get on a stage in front of 700 people and an amazing channeler has just come on before and talked about karmic history, and we get up there and say, well, that's irrelevant now. You have to relieve yourself a little bit of purpose in those moments.
I love that.
So, the great unknowing, really. There's a lot of pressure involved with information. I used to do a lot of more business and corporate stuff.
With the channeling?
Quietly.
How so?
People who want to know certain things, or want to structure a contract in a particular way, or
that's fascinating.
Or about to invest a lot of money.
That they would engage you.
Yeah, but there's pressure involved in that, and there's purpose involved, because there's a desired effect. So I'm moving away from that way of doing things. I'm more interested in the unknown now, I think, rather than the known. People can get very attached to wanting to know.
You said the safety of the answer.
Yeah.
So it's one of the most liberating things to be able to sit there and go, do you know what? I just don't fucking know.
I know. Do you know, if you look at a person, really sink into that, their whole energetic field opens up. It's so beautiful.
So I spent 18 years being a management consultant, which is one of the most fantastic career choice abdication jobs. Right. You don't know what the fuck you want to do. Right. But you might want to do something that has some sort of business related thing, because you might want to make some money at the time. Go and be a business consultant. Go and help fix other people's problems in their businesses, because then you accelerate your learning. You don't have to take responsibility. It's not your skin in the game, and you just, it's awesome. The challenge with that, especially when you end up working for a top 5 consultancy, global consultancy like I did, and you're being billed out at $3,500 a day, is people kind of expect stuff for $3,500 a day. So you have this pressure of always being right or on point or on the game or confident.
Mm-hmm.
And so I became really, really adept at least presenting like I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I became really really comfortable at knowing that as long as I was at least 3 steps ahead, and if I could see what 4, 5, 6 were as well, it was adding value. Right? And then, I've only just come to realise very recently through a number of experiences that whilst that analytical brain and that part and that thing that I developed, which has generated me income, it's also been fucking tiring.
Yeah. It's mental gymnastics.
100%. And just to be able to just put that to one side and do stuff like this and just explore, and it's like, in the early days of doing podcasts, like, is this a good one or is this a bad one? Is this a good one? No, it just is. In fact, do you know what? They're all awesome.
Yeah.
They're all awesome.
They're all perfect creations.
This is a freaking awesome conversation. And just recently, the relief of being able to sit there, just go and go for it and play.
Because when you step
Pretty sure we
into
can figure it out, but
when you step into the unknown, that's where the gold is.
Yeah, we open up possibility and probability.
Of course. Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Totally. You're out of probability.
Yeah. If you're out of probability, you're inside, you're in, the door's closed.
Yeah.
You want all the doors open.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's exciting stuff.
It is exciting.
So when you're not channeling, do you now have the ability to switch this on and off?
Yeah.
So
I wouldn't say it's so much switching it on and off anymore.
Okay.
I'd say it's knowing when to draw on it and when not to. And many times
dial it up, dial it down.
It would be very difficult to tell when I'm doing that.
Right. So I gather it's probably switched on and off during the course of this conversation.
Yeah, and you've felt it in your body when that's happened.
Yeah. I did it a couple of minutes ago. I was sitting there, I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
Super vibrating.
Yeah.
I've often, actually as an aside, I've seen this little device recently called a Sputnik that measures various energetic fields, and I've often wondered whether it would be great to have one during the course of a podcast.
That'd be fun.
And then just monitor the readings and see where the peaks have been and what was actually being spoken about.
Great idea.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'd find that it spikes when there's complete agreement or resonance with what's being said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But back to the whole, can you switch it on or dial it up, dial it down? When you dial it down, what does Rebecca do to stay grounded?
I used to drink a lot of wine.
Right.
I don't anymore.
What does Rebecca do instead?
Actually, this is another thing I'm learning at the moment too. Because I've always been so heightened with my senses, I have always learnt to unwind by dulling things down.
Hence the wine.
Right. Wine, relaxing music, lying on the couch. I'm just discovering this year how to feel relaxed by meeting that with stimulation. So heightened sense, meeting it with stimulation. So you know how sometimes you're feeling edgy or I'm restless and I've got nervous energy or whatever it is. Instead of trying to dull that down, I now do something that meets that level of stimulation. So I'll go and do something new I haven't done before. Or I will get really excited about something. Or go for a really strenuous walk or hike. And just meet it where it is. So I'm just playing with that at the moment because I've never done that before, and I've been doing it for a few months, and I don't get tired anymore. And I've spent the last 6 years being tired. I'm always tired. My son's always moaning at me, "Mum, you're always tired."
Why have you been tired? Because you've been dulling?
I think so. Because that's been my default for so many years, is wind down. And really what I need to do now is get life to match where I am instead of winding down.
Because if you're generally living being at this heightened level, at this level of frequency, resonance, whatever you want to call it, whatever helps, why don't you just stay there?
Well, what I've realised is that I do stay there.
Yeah. I guess it's making sense to me now. It's just now go meet it with more leisure activities.
Just meet it where it is instead of trying to change it to fit in with whatever's happening around me. So now it's more like, okay, well, if this is how you're feeling, meet that with the energy of where it's at. Because the conditioning with me was, this feels like tension and stress, but actually it's not tension and stress if you meet it where it is.
Yeah.
Because then you've got agreement between the internal and external reality.
So did you then have to come up with things to do to meet it? Or
it's just kind of happening. Like I'm like super busy and stimulated at the moment, which is kind of different for me. I've spent my whole life trying to escape.
Yeah.
Really? I can't tell you how many tropical island holidays I've had over the years. Because I'm like, I'm just going to dull everything down. And now it's like, let's go to the busiest city that we can find. And, but it's not nervous energy. It's just very calming because it's meeting it where it is. Yeah, it's new. I'm still playing with it, so... Yeah.
I often ask guests what are you up to in the next 3 to 5 years, but you're just going to tell me, well, it's just going to create itself, so I'm not going to ask that question.
Well, I've done a lot in the last few years that I never thought I would possibly do. I thought I was moving to the United States this year. That was all lined up, and that didn't happen. So I don't know now. I'm just kind of sitting here waiting for something to happen. It will.
Well, the last questions I ask, but it's not actually going to be the last question today because I've got another one, is I asked one of my guests this. If you had a little nugget of wisdom that you could just load up into the collective consciousness so everyone just gets it, what would it be?
You are the only thing that exists.
Awesome. That'd solve a lot of things, wouldn't it?
I mean, quantum physicists know that now.
And I've had a quantum physicist on the show.
Yeah. Reality is spherical. You're at the center point of it. Don't worry so much. There's not a whole bunch of problems out there to be solved.
There's not?
No. The mind loves a good problem to solve, and it will create one if there isn't any. So if you realize you're the only thing that really exists, what is there to do other than to honor whatever arises from you? If you're the only thing that ever exists, or only thing that exists in this moment, then you're not existing from reaction. You're existing from expression.
In essence.
Creative force. What will you say then? What will you do then? What will you come up with then? What will you project into external reality then? That's how you build a new planet. Very hard to create a new planet when everyone's very focused on trying to solve the paradigm of the one that already exists. Very difficult.
Is that where you come from when you refer to new world?
New reality, yeah. Putting yourself back at the center. Because we don't. We give ourselves up. We believe that because we're compassionate that we sacrifice ourselves for the good of others. You remove yourself from your center point, you can't do anything, you're impotent. And I think a lot of humanity is feeling pretty impotent these days. Because we're trying to fix everything out there instead of just understanding that we exist. Yeah. So, question of focus, I think.
Just finally.
Yes.
Is there anything you, singular, or you, plural?
Or us.
Or us.
Collectively.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before? Or share?
I think that I have been very, very inclined to take life too seriously, to take myself too seriously, to take my sense of purpose too seriously. And I think it's only as I start to release that and drop into the I don't know that my life will actually start to open up and I'll actually be able to create some things. So I think that's the same for many of us. And perhaps those who are listening to this is bring the focus back to yourself and the rest of life unfolds. It's not a selfish thing to do that. That's not a lack of compassion. That's just not sacrificial compassion. Yeah, so I guess that's it.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I've loved every minute of it.
Yeah, me too. I've really felt it in every cell. So thanks for having me here. Good fun.
If people want to find you?
Website, my name, rebeccadawson.net. So I've got lots of free resources on there. Lots of things to engage with if you're interested.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you too.